Hello, I'm Harry Wright, autistic comedian. You're watching Autism 101. This is a web series every week in UK lockdown, and this week I'll be devoting the majority of the episode to a long interview with fellow autistic comedian Mark Burkwood. He's an extremely funny guy, lovely bloke, does a lot for accessibility in British comedy. He runs a night in London called Laugh Able, which aims to provide, in Mark's words, a wheelchair-accessible platform to comics with disabilities and mental health issues. He does a lot of other stuff as well. So, yeah, I've been trying to pin him down for a while, and yeah, really looking forward to this one. So, yeah, Mark Burkwood.
Brilliant. So I know you from the London Comedy Circuit and from running a night called Laugh Able, which is a night specifically for neurodiverse performers, people with disabilities, mental health conditions. Do you want to tell anyone listening a little bit about how you started comedy, what you're doing, and a little bit about your night, and then we can sort of go from there?
Okay, so I started comedy about 3 years ago. I had a bit of a weird start to it. So I was traveling in Southeast Asia and I was living out in Vietnam, and there was this creative expat scene out there, and I've always loved comedy, so I thought I'd get involved. And then weirdly enough, we did some workshops and we did a showcase. So my very first gig was in Saigon in a place called Yoko.
Oh wow!
Named after obviously Yoko.
Yeah, Yoko. Wow.
And it was just, and it was actually, it wasn't like just American and English people. There were Vietnamese people, and Vietnamese love American style comedy as well. It was actually a very inclusive type of scene going on. But then when I came back to London, I was like, I'm going to do London open mic, and then I was too scared to. Waited a year, and then I did some. I went on a course, and then did my very first showcase in London.
Right.
At the comedy pub, I think it was.
Okay.
And then from there, I just started doing open mic stuff, and
brilliant.
Yeah. And then with my night, how that came about is there's been other nights that I really like. So there's like obviously a night called Quantum Leopard. And that's a very sort of inclusive, no punching down night. And I spoke to the promoter of Quantum Leopard about setting up a disability night. I just needed some advice on it, and he gave me some advice, and he gave me some really good links to people I could sort of talk to. So our first headliner was Erin Simmons, who's done like major stuff.
Erin's a fantastic comedian. For those that might not know, Erin is a physically disabled comedian. He was in the final of BBC New Comedy Award a couple of years ago, and a lot of other things. He's someone worth checking out as well. I think I was at that night, and I remember it being definitely something that was long overdue, and everyone was really funny. Yeah, so basically you sort of built from there.
Yeah. And it was amazing because any promoter, because I spoke to other promoters as well, they were very supportive of what I was doing. Like sort of a shout out as well goes to Carl Wallace at G&B. He's been very supportive of the night, just because he's linked me up with acts. He's helped me promote the night, and from there. And then Evan then recommended other comedians to me, and you know, in terms of sort of headliner spots. But what I really am pushing for now is sort of a sense of progression. So people can start doing 5 and 10 minutes there, but if they smash their few 10-minute sets, they can then maybe go on to get a headline spot. Like we had Luke Poulton headline on the virtual night, and he had performed like 2 or 3 really strong 10 minutes. I mean, Luke Poulton's really going up in terms. He's an autistic comedian.
Yeah, he's going up and going places at the moment. He'll probably be on this in a few weeks anyway. So yeah, that'll be well worth hearing.
So that's the thing about my night. It's not just I want to give a space for disabled acts and with mental health conditions. It's all about sort of progression as well, because I know how hard it is, because we both been there and trying to progress and work your way up, and especially from a neurodiverse background.
If you find it hard to, networking can be hard sometimes. There's sort of little bits you need to do, and it's definitely something I remember before Laugh Able was a thing. You ran a sort of performance night at an autism centre in Islington.
Yes, I did.
And I remember thinking a good thing about that was that it started and finished very early, which is something a lot of, I think, people could try and do their own stuff. And I mean, I know a lot of neurodiverse people that find it difficult to sort of be out late all the time. So I think it's becoming more aware of, promoters that are neurodiverse become more aware of things like that and how to sort of work around having autistic acts.
Yeah, absolutely. And like actually that night that talked about is an organisation called Autism Hub, and I started some sort of workshops with a few autistic people, and we were going to then do a showcase similar to the one we did at Autism Hub. But then, you know, what was difficult is there was quite a few of them that were so sort of scared about then doing a showcase in front of people, so they felt they needed another set of workshops in order to do it. And we were about to do that, and then obviously lockdown happened, so it was just all a bit. But yeah, no. So like, and also with Laugh Able, I want to start running workshops as well. The venue as well, I have Redbridge Central Library. They're very supportive, and you know, they don't charge us for the room as well, which is brilliant. Which means I can get in snacks and beers for the acts and stuff.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely, if anyone's listening that is in that position themselves or wants to come and support it, it's well worth it. So is that that's going to be coming back as soon as we can after lockdown, really?
So hopefully November. So at the moment we're just doing virtual nights, but if you want to sign up to virtual night, Laugh Able Comedy Night at gmail.com, to send me a video, and any neurodiverse acts listening, please get in touch.
I'll put all the details in the video description. And you've recently started working acts and mental health issues as well, which I think is I mean, that could include potentially all comedians, but it's definitely an underrepresented sector. But that's definitely an underrepresented sector as well. I think it's something that people talk about in their work a lot, but people sometimes feel they have to hide in order to get on in the sort of get up the ladder.
Yeah, and it's weird as well, because it's like a lot of acts say to me, "Oh, do my sets need to be about my disability or my mental health?" I'm like, well, not necessarily. It just gives you a space. It gives you a very inclusive, safe space to watch. And the community we have watching the night is very, very supportive audience. They're a lovely crowd, because they all often most of them have mental health issues and disabilities. So it's a very nice. I want to create a very nice sort of safe space where you can explore that if you want to, but then you can just do your own stuff. Like I don't want to dictate what people are doing. It's just that, as you said, Harry, there's many nights that don't. It's not they don't support it. It's that.
No, but it makes it harder for comedians to be overt about things going on in their life, because it's some are focused on, say, performing a very slick set or doing a certain sort of thing. I remember Matt Wills doing Laugh Able, who's a fantastic comic, and Matt normally does a very kind of traditional style of observational comedy, but he opened up about a physical disability he suffers with, and it added a lot of, I don't think anyone had heard that set before, and it added a lot to him as a comic. It definitely felt like it had improved him to do it. So you could learn a lot about people, acts you might not have thought of in that way from hearing that perspective.
Absolutely, and I think that's the main thing I want with that night, just to give that open, sort of friendly space to do that. And again, a sense of progression. Like, I really want to build this night. I've spoken to, there's other disabled comics as well that live outside of London that want to who want to start a Laugh Able type night in like the East Midlands or up north and stuff. So it's definitely going to be going places. So hopefully
be an empire one day.
That's the plan as well. But like not just me running it, just like I want to a disabled commune or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone has an equal say. That's everyone should have a voice. But
I know you run sort of similar like performance sessions and tutoring outside of for neurodiverse autistic acts, sort of in your daily, like in your sort of day-to-day life. Do you want to talk a bit about that? I think you're a special needs assistant.
So my main job is I'm a special needs assistant in a special needs school, and what's been really good about that is just the insight I've got from I've worked there best part of 9 years now, and that's how I really got passionate about sort of disability. Like I've had Asperger's since I was about 11, but then started to work in the schools when I finished uni. I got a real sense of passion and justice for because a lot of the kids we're taking on now are kids that have been excluded from mainstream. Mainstream they won't accept their needs anymore. And I imagine if I was growing up now as a child with autism, I'd find mainstream very hard. I found it hard enough when I was a kid, but it's just and also I do a lot of creative stuff with them as well. So I do like a lot of drama and stuff. So
and that's a really important thing, part of creative expression for them.
Yes, creative expression for autistic and neurodiverse people it helped me massively.
Yeah,
and it helps a lot of the kids that I work with. And we have a lot of kids with emotional behaviour disabilities as well. Like have come from like pupil referral units. So like we deal with very sort of challenging children, but we give them that space to be creative and to express themselves. And that's what's really nice about working in a special needs school, because we're not tied down to a curriculum, which is as long as we meet their needs and as long as they're progressing, that's all I just wish every school was like that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Do you feel that informs your perspective as a comedian, and the sort of things that you explore and what you feel you sort of free to talk about?
I think because I did sort of start talking about that, but sort of making a joke of it. Like I always say, like, autistic, our work in special needs schools, a bit like the blind leading the blind, you know, that sort of stuff. And stuff like, you know, like it's really challenging, you know, they do all this, but then I have problems. Like it's a lot of their challenging behaviours and their meltdowns that they might have. I can see it coming because
you can relate to it.
I can relate, and I've been in that situation before, so I come in from a sort of empathetic. And so I think in terms of informing my comedy, I think it's allowed me to express stuff about disability a bit more sort of on stage and be like, you know, I can make jokes of it because not only am I autistic, I work in the special needs. So I'm experienced with that, but it's not about punching down on them. It's about actually I want to sort of try and punch down on the system because it can be very, very sort of challenging. I mean, we've had Ofsted inspectors coming in and grading us down because there's a child crying in the corner because he can't cope with having such a rigorous lesson. And it's like, well, the system they can't fit within your bubble. They can't fit within your criteria. That's not our fault.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like, so yeah, I make some jokes about. I'd like to talk about more about the education system on stage. That's definitely something that I could explore because I think it's a system, not just the education system, society as a whole. Is not very inclusive and it's very judgmental.
I think sadly that's still true. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of comedy, the London scene has been mostly supportive. There's been one or two, maybe not, but. Like, I mean, the amount of open mic scenes that are not even wheelchair accessible. Like, I always point it out when I'm on stage. So, like, I'm on a night, a wheelchair accessible venue. I like this. I do. And
it's important.
It's shitting on a night, but it's actually pointing out. No, you need to have accessible.
Yeah, I don't think it's shitting on something or being negative about it to point out things that should be standard nowadays. I mean, I understand if venues aren't accessible and that's the only place they could do the night, but it should be a standard now. It's no different to say making sure you book female acts or minority acts, you know, because you're consciously cutting out a huge number of comedians like that and fantastic ones like Aaron as well.
But yeah, and it's stuff like quite a few nights has this format where they don't tell you when you're going to go on. Now, I hate as an autistic person. I like to have a plan. I like to. Well, actually, all comics do like to mentally prepare before you go on stage. And I mean, I'm not going to name any particular because I think it does happen at quite a few. They'll just send you on, and it's like, whoa, you're like, okay, when am I going to psych myself up?
Yeah, I've definitely struggled on the circuit with a lot of I mean, it's part of the game, but the noise and sort of extraneous music and extraneous bits and pieces at nights, and sort of have explained that it's something I struggle with mixed reactions. So it's definitely something that people could be more aware of, I think.
Yeah, and I think slowly that's happening, but I think it is happening, and I think nights like mine, hopefully. Because then I read that there's going to be a mental health night starting soon.
That would be fantastic if that does.
Yeah. And this person was talking about it. I'm trying to remember his name, but Eddie, the point is that's really good that they've seen Or maybe they haven't seen, or maybe they've just found a space where that can happen. Because there is nights for like female acts, there is nights for LGBT.
Yeah.
And I think the comedy scene has progressed in that level.
Definitely,
when it comes to like disability, and mental health, it's a long way to go.
What would you say to I know there's people, both bookers and comedians, who would say that having sort of nights specifically aimed at, say, LGBT people or people with autism or people with disabilities is kind of missing the point because it's boxing people in further. And I know that's not something you think. What would you say about that?
Well, do you know what? No, because actually when you have a night like that, because more often than not, those people that fall in those categories will be the token of any other open mic nights, or even the token 2 or 3. There'll be and I know there are nights that lean obviously more friendly towards LGBT acts anyway, but they don't specifically say they're LGBT. And
so it's redressing the balance in an active way, I personally think.
Yeah, and do you know what? If all nights wanted to do that, then you wouldn't. But you need themed nights because it's not that. I think what people don't understand that the reason there are themed nights is because those people haven't been given the space to do it, or they haven't felt like they have been given the space to perform in a way that's supportive. So
it's necessary to actively change that by by putting those acts into places where we might not be normally.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the idea of positive discrimination. I've had many debates with people about it, but the main thing about that is, no, you're readdressing what's been a huge unbalance over the years, that minority groups do get shit on, whether that's comedy or elsewhere, or any sort of industry. And actually, it's about actually helping redress the balance, and that's and it's like the whole Black Lives Matter thing. So I'm going on right now, but
no, of course,
it's also white lives don't matter, but it's saying no, we just want to be mattered, we just want to be listened to because we're not being listened to. And I think that's the main thing with any minority groups, whatever category you fall in, you just want to be listened to. And I that's why there are themed nights, and I think that's why it's so important. But yeah,
absolutely, I think it's and I know some of your material focuses on your autism, but much of it sort of doesn't. Much of it is more observational, or you trying different bits and pieces out. There's a surreal twist to what you do as well. Do you feel that it's sort of necessary or important, heavily inverted commas, to discuss, say, disabilities or issues that are going on stage? Do you feel you have to as an autistic act, or do you feel that it is saying you're autistic and being out in the world is enough, whether you're a performer or not?
Well, I think where I'd love to see my act go, like in terms of I'm nowhere near to writing an hour worth of set, but
one day.
One day. But it's sort of like what I'd like to do. I want to sort of hold up sort of the stereotypes, but then take them apart. So the idea, what I'm trying to work towards now, is coming on stage, being the stereotype autistic person. We're not all the same. The spectrum's fucking huge. And if that but at the same time, you can still throw in observational jokes, but it's about what you do on stage, and there's sort of a character and how you emerge from that. And so I want to, in my set, take people on that sort of journey and go, do you know what? Here are the stereotypes. You're all thinking it, blah, blah, blah.
But here's who Mark actually is as a person.
Here's who I am. Yeah, I've traits, definitely, but I'm on the spectrum. I'm very different to say, we're on the spectrum, Harry, but we're both different we're both individuals. So I think that's what's really important, saying there are these stereotypes but don't listen to it. So I think it's very important to hold it up for everyone to see. It's like the elephant in the room, right? This is it, this is what you're all thinking. I've said I'm autistic, here's the list of things you're thinking, and I'm going to take that apart bit by bit for you. And I think that's where I think it needs to sort of go as well, because there is a sort of this almost element of people defining you by your disability. It's important to people know you're autistic so they can make certain adjustments, but you're not sort of.
It's not that it shouldn't be seen as, even if you're wanting certain adjustments made, it shouldn't be seen as the be all and end all of what you are as a performer.
No, absolutely not, because you know, your style is very different to my style, but we're both autistic, but that's a good thing. And there's other autistic acts, a lot of autistic acts on the circuit. I didn't realise how many when I first started.
Yeah, there are more and more. I think as people become more aware of it, more people have been diagnosed. And it's and I think in some ways it's maybe a bit of a stereotype, but the sort of the lonely life of like the single male comic that sort of maybe is very good at writing and finding patterns and being able to deliver material in a structured way and maybe hold those conversations with audiences that you might find more difficult in real life. Like, I think that lends itself to something autistic people are often very good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and also it's that sort of thing for 5-10 minutes or however long you do, you can talk about yourself on stage, and that's autistic. And it's also because us autistic people, we have our obsessions, we have things we're very knowledgeable about, we have things that we want, and we sometimes find it difficult to have a maybe two-way conversation, but actually on stage it lends itself. But this is because often if I'm in a large group and we're out socialising, I'll find it hard to have conversations. But you're on stage talking to a large crowd, and that's it. That's your conversation right there. People can get to know you. And so I think you're right. And you can do it in a structured way as well, but you're in control. And I think it's that sense of sometimes not being in control of certain situations.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that's why I do it. It's a control that I don't normally have because it's I'm becoming a sort of channel that I can't get elsewhere in life in some ways, or that certainly was when I started.
Yeah, but I think as well, like comedy's opened up a lot of doors for me. Like, it's actually helped me be better socially as well. Because then people come up to you, and if they've enjoyed your set and they chat to you, it gives you a massive confidence boost. And that's what one thing. Yes, there's a lot of problems in comedy, but what it can lend itself is actually it does give autistic people and other people neurodiverse that confidence that they never had before, that voice that they never had before.
Absolutely.
At school, I was one of the quietest kids there. Like, if you ever met me now, I'm anything but.
Yeah. I think that's really true. I think I remember you saying you were diagnosed at 11. Without wanting to get into sort of sensitive topics, obviously you don't have to overshare anything. What's very briefly your kind of journey as someone with autism been to get you to sort of where you are now as somebody that's obviously very able to work and do sort of social things and have hobbies and interests and be a creative person? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that's gone on.
Yeah, no, there is, and I think it's interesting as well because I have an identical twin who's autistic, and he was diagnosed first when he was 9. Okay. And the reason they thought I didn't have Asperger's is because they thought I was copying him, which is apparently quite common with twins.
Right, that makes sense.
It's a thing you don't realise, but apparently, twins when they're younger will copy each other. But then I started having my own sort of traits as well that were unique to my brothers, and that's when I thought, no, we'll get marking assessment as well. And in all fairness, my mum was really on it with the school because what they did before, they actually assessed us without even telling my mum. Then my mum came in with a leaflet about Asperger's or something. She was like, I've got this, I think my sons have it. And they're like, oh no, we've already tested them, they don't. And she flipped out, got in an external psychologist, and she was always on our side in terms of sort of fighting for support, and also at that time as well, child mental health services were actually really good. They were actually good. So we saw this sort of psychiatrist, and we had family therapy. We had 2 older brothers as well. So that helped, having 2 older brothers that are neurotypical, because they taught us things that we wouldn't necessarily pick up.
That's important. I mean, I'm an only child, and definitely I wonder sometimes if it was easier for autistic people in larger family units growing up, or sort of harder, and in what ways.
Well, I think if you're the oldest, I know people who have younger brothers and sisters, that can be harder because you're expected to teach them and be their role model, whereas we had 2 older brothers who are automatically our role models. Like, they were deliberately sarcastic to us, and my mum hated that. And then in a family therapy session, like the psychiatrist went, no, that's a good thing because they're being deliberately sarcastic in a safe space where they can then talk to the boys about. And it helped me and my brother a lot to get by every day. I mean, we still had a lot of struggles at school. We were bullied the hell out of, just because we were different, and we were. we were easily able to be manipulated. So we
right, yeah, I've had that experience now as a young one as well.
Well, in order to make friends, the friends would get us to do things that we would get in trouble
bad
for.
Practical jokes and that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah, and we wouldn't really realise, and so we'd be doing stuff that was like kind of bad and stuff, and then we would be like get in trouble. And our teacher said you cannot do what they're telling you. But they're my friends, and like they're not your friends. And it was the hardest thing for me to realise that, because I felt that's what was expected of you.
Yeah, it feels like a sort of, when you look at friendship in sort of quite a literal way when you're younger, it feels like a betrayal of that, because obviously you've been taught what friendship is, and you're not necessarily old enough as a young autistic person to sort of connect the dots about the more subtle context in which friendship exists.
Exactly, because there's things like emotional manipulation that no one tells you about. That
because why would they?
Yeah, and because it's like implicit. You should know that when someone's taking the piss.
Yeah,
but we never. And so it was the biggest challenge. But then, like, as we got older, again, I started doing drama, and that really helped in school, boost my confidence and helped me get out my shell a bit. So people started to like me a bit more. College was better because people were there because they wanted to learn. And there was a sense of maturity as well, so people didn't judge so quickly, and so actually I found that college was a bit easier. Could be myself a bit more, and same with uni as well. Again, got a lot of support at uni, but yeah, and I also found that my friendships groups became smaller. But the friends I did have
were closer,
were actual friends. And I just remember my older brother always said to me, like, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So you might have maybe 2 friends, but they might be the closest people in your life. Or you might have 20 friends and they don't give a shit.
Yeah, that's really important.
And it took me ages to realise, because I thought you need to have lots of friends. And I remember inviting loads of friends to a house party once when I was in my early 20s. Only about 3 turned up, and then my family were there as well. And they were like, they're the ones that you need to, they're the ones that actually are your friends.
They've just proved themselves as like being worth keeping around.
So I think my journey's it's got better. And actually, I mean, the school were supportive in terms of my academia, but there still needs to be a lot done to address bullying, and in terms of bullying and neurodiverse kids, because that's a huge thing. That still need.
It still happens we're both in our sort of 20s, 30s, and that's still something that happens today. Kids in secondary school. I mean, my mum works with special needs pupils, and they definitely don't have an easy time.
Yeah, I mean, was your experience quite similar to mine then?
It was quite similar in some ways, yeah. I think I was, I'm looking at getting an ADHD diagnosis at the moment.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm probably closer to there than I am autistic, because I think because I was quite sort of quiet and studious and like good at lessons, and my mum worked at the school as a teaching assistant. They wanted to get something pushed through before secondary school, just to have something on a piece of paper. But because I wasn't like, there was a very sort of class-based aspect to it, and because I wasn't like hopped up on Lucozade and running around the playground, kind of some ADHD traits I think got missed. But it was similar in a lot of ways. Yeah, there was definitely kind of feeling very outside of where other kids were and how they interacted. And having like a couple of close friends, but not really understanding how social relations worked beyond that. But I mean, again, for me, having my mum working in the primary school I was at helped a lot, because I think she was able to sort of behind the scenes contextualize it for teachers and make it a bit easier. But yeah, again, as I got older and as I sort of met more people that share my interests, or people that are a bit more mature because they've grown up a bit and maybe have a bit of experience of life, things got easier. And I mean, I think that's the case for young people in general, but particularly for neurodiverse and autistic people, it seems to be something that is really common. Not that it's easy in adult either, but the older you get, the more able you are to navigate the world around you, and for people to help out with that. And like, that's why I think, comedy and performance and other things like that can be hugely useful things, because there's a lot of adults that mean well but aren't very understanding of it, and it can be a useful context to provide to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So I think as my journey is, it has got easier, but I know I wouldn't be where I am without sort of the support I got from my family, from teachers were on the whole supportive. They just the social side is but yeah, so it has got easier, but I still have a problem. Like, I'm not cured. It's not gonna.
No, it's not like, curable. Yeah, there's definitely a narrative that's started coming around recently again of it being like a a disease that could be cured, which is obviously not the case.
Yeah, but it's like I used to receive disability living allowance when I was a child, and even young adult, I got disabled student allowance, right?
Yeah,
because there were certain things also I really struggle with, like I had really bad fine hand motor skills, so I couldn't use a knife and fork properly. Like I learned to ride a bike at 14. I struggled to cross the road because I was so unaware of my surroundings. I was so focused. Autistic is the one-track mind, so I never but I never went out like and hung out with people till I was about 16, 17, whereas most kids were doing that when they were 11. So
and I've definitely felt having that experience too. Like, as an adult, it's taken me a little bit longer, not to mature, but to understand how social relations and friendship groups even work. I mean, it's only now in my sort of late 20s that I'm doing those things, you know, at the point where a lot of people are focusing on their career, for example. And you definitely feel like you're sort of not emotionally behind, but it feels like you're 5 years back almost sometimes. I mean, I've definitely had that experience. I know autistic friends have as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a very sort of common sort of theme as well. And but I'll continue to make mistakes. I'll continue to say things that I don't realise that's offensive because I don't know. Sometimes I'm a bit sort of brutally honest, and but I will sort of I don't have a filter, and that can get me into hot water sometimes still. So there are elements to that, and I think you alluded to it earlier, the whole networking aspect of comedy as well. It's like And there's a lot of sort of cliques. No, I'm saying there's anything wrong with cliques.
No, but they happen. But it doesn't make it's not easy to navigate.
It's not easy to navigate. I'm like, well, how are they all such sort of close? And then how do they elevate to certain statuses or whatever? I've been performing as long as they have, but they seem to.
What do you think that promoters and other acts can do to make things easier for autistic acts or make the circuit? I mean, we're talking very much about the sort of open mic circuit and the sort of lower rungs of the pro circuit. What do you think that promoters and other acts that aren't autistic or aren't neurodiverse could do to make things more accessible for us?
I think just I think being sort of friendly, obviously friendly and welcoming. I mean, most promoters are decent enough anyway, but like when they're having a chat with other acts that they've known and stuff, or even after you get off stage and they're all talking about just to feel like you're included, because I don't think they understand how hard it is for us to go up to someone and start chatting to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is difficult. So just to be very maybe more openly welcoming. I'm not saying promoters are not welcoming, but having that very much open. Oh, do you know what?
Making the effort to come up to you rather than just being generally friendly. Yeah,
exactly. Making the effort to come up to you and like whatever, and taking the time to chat to you afterwards. Like even if your set went good or bad, and it's just having a general chat with you, because it's hard for us to. I'm not saying it should all be one-sided. We need to do more, but just when you walk in there, just to feel welcomed.
Yeah, definitely.
Because
what about other acts and maybe people who aren't promoters?
But I think the same thing as well. I think it's just about making us feel more obviously welcomed, and also not to rush to snap judgments if we've said the wrong thing or whatever, or when we tell them about our autism, they don't have ideas going on in their head and whatever, and then not sort of want to talk to us after. Stuff like that. Like I don't know, just to be a bit more understanding, a bit more welcoming, friendly. I think that's the main thing. I would say. Yeah,
definitely. What I'll wrap up in a minute, but what's the sort of funniest or most unusual, interesting experience you've had on stage as an autistic act?
So like I remember when as an autistic act. Oh, that was it. So I was chatting about my autism. So hi, I'm Mark. I'm autistic, and this woman from the back of the room just went, "Aww," It's like I'm autistic. I'm not 3. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I know she was being like nice, but it felt so fucking patronising, and it was just like, really, like you cute, and like I'm 30 fucking years old. Like, seriously. But yeah, that's my weirdest experience.
I can imagine that happening, actually.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cute. Off, like,
yeah. Before thanks very much for coming on. And before I stop recording, what have you? Obviously, we've talked about Laughable a bit. Is there anything you want to plug that you're doing at the moment? I know you're also doing a podcast, or were until recently. Obviously, I'll put all the descriptions in the video. But yeah, is there anything you want to let people know that you've got coming up, or that want to plug or talk about for a bit? Upcoming projects.
Okay, so the next Laughable virtual comedy night is on the 11th of September, and we'll have Don Biswas headlining, so that's going to be very exciting. And I'm doing a gig tonight, but I obviously won't go out then. So like, I don't know. I'm doing that virtual night. Autism Hour podcast.
Okay.
I really want to get you on at some point.
Yeah, I need to come on at some point. We've had a few misconnections, but I'm keen to come on. So that's you interview sort of different autistic
comics on the circuit. So I talk about the comedy, the autism, their life. Actually, quite a lot similar to sort of this, actually.
Yeah.
So I did that Autism Hour podcast, and so stuff like that. But Laughable and Autism Hour podcast, they're the main things I'm doing at the moment.
I'll put those all down. Brilliant. I'm gonna stop recording in a sec.
Fantastic.
Or start.